So before I jump into the overview, I just want to, well, I guess I'll play this animation while we're waiting here. So before I jump into the overview, I just want to tell you guys, thank you so much for checking out Mograph and making the channel what it is today. I have so much fun posting these tutorials and making fun little things and getting feedback from you guys. You are honestly the reason why Mograph is here and why I hope I can have it continue to exist, because it's so much fun being a part of and doing. So anyway, this video is an overview to the motion script that I created, and it's just a tool to help you create really cool animation. This little graphic we're seeing right here was created pretty much exclusively with Motion version 2, and then the After Effects just like shape layers. And this is stuff that I can't wait to get into, and this little tool over here should really help you guys out. So yeah, if you have a Motion V1 license or bought it through my website, which it's only going to be available through mountmograph.com, it's a free update. It's a lifetime free updates when you buy Motion. Any update or any tool I add to it is always going to be free. It's always going to be coming out directly to you guys, and it's going to be one of probably the cheapest tool you can get with as many features as I can pack in it. So that's basically my little spiel before the video. I tried to keep it short. It took a lot longer than anticipated, but there are so many features. You know, there's over 20 features, there's hundreds and hundreds of tools, and there are probably infinite combinations of things you can make with this Motion tool. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the video. I hope you like what you see, and as always, leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, anything you want. I'm happy to hear from you. You guys rock, and here is Motion version 2. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Mount Mograph. I am so excited because today I get to release the update to Motion version 2. As you can see, we have Motion version 1 right here, and this is the updated version. Motion is a tool to speed and enhance your workflow in Adobe After Effects, and is going to give you, in the new version, over 20 unique tools to let your creativity flow and effortlessly explore new ideas on the fly. So basically, Motion 2 is here to put the power back in your hands and the punch back in your keyframes. How is that for a snazzy little tagline? Basically, I've worked really hard to make the user interface smaller and easier to use, and also give you even more tools, functionality, optimizations, all that stuff in this tiny little panel that easily fits in with the rest of your workspace, no matter what size it is. Along with that, I have so much to show you, and I'll try to keep this video short. One of the most exciting features is that it now supports all languages, so you can use it in your native language with no problems whatsoever. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the first section. So basically, in this tiny little panel that we are going to call Motion, it is going to be able to fit in pretty much any workspace you can imagine, and it works really well on tiny little computer monitors that are 12-inch screens all the way up to a 27-inch or 4K monitor. Should work really well with your workspace and fit to what you like to use. So basically, it's going to be your animation wingman, so you can focus on having fun and creating really great content. So basically, the first section I'd like to talk about is something called the speed sliders, and those sit right here. So this was in the first version as well. Let me go ahead and just trim this composition a little bit, and this controls your easing for your keyframes. So what we're going to do is just set a couple keyframes here and make a real quick animation. We don't really have to worry about what exactly it's doing. I probably should have keyframed position, so let me also do that. We'll go back and set a starting point for these couple cubes or squares, or whatever you want to call them, and as you can see, we have a really wonderful static linear animation. So typically you would go and select these keyframes and add easing to it, pressing F9 on your keyboard, and thus going into the graph editor to control your velocity for the easing types to create an animation that's more interesting. What Motion does is it gives you a unique way to control and animate these keyframes. By selecting keyframes, you are able to drag these sliders here, and those will control the velocity for your keyframes. The top slider is going to control your ease out, the middle is your easy ease, and the bottom is the ease in. So by simply dragging the slider, you'll be able to see the velocity change that you'll be adding to these keyframes, and as you can see, it's added the easy ease at a 64% velocity, and it's now going to look a lot more interesting than its little compadres sitting on the rest of the screen. So quite easily, you can select other keyframes and do the same thing, setting this one to 31% or this one all the way up to maybe 91%. It's pretty quick and fun to use, and as you can see, the animation really comes together pretty quickly. So one of the cool things about this is not only can you control just the keyframes on one layer, you can control the keyframes across all the layers. So we can easily slide and change it to 60%, and the keyframes will all then have the 60% velocity. Additionally, you will be able to select as many points as you want, or keyframes as you want, and if I pop into the graph editor just to visualize this, we can change the out easing simply by dragging that, and as you can see, it's going to update. So it's a really quick and easy way to dynamically change your animation, and once again, you can control your ease in by dragging the slider at the bottom. New in version 2, you are actually able to click the buttons here to add the ease type that is already selected in the velocity. So if you did an animation on maybe this middle cube at 41 and you seem to really find that to be the velocity that you would like, you can just select your other keyframes and click this button to add that 41% velocity to that keyframe, which is a really nice and fun feature. Additionally, you are able to drag these various sliders to get different kinds of keyframes added when you set it down to 0. So if you drag the top slider down to 0, it's going to show you that you will get an auto Bezier keyframe when you let go. As you can see, it'll update for you. So by doing that, we now have the auto Bezier type. Likewise, when you grab the keyframes and move the middle slider down to 0, you're going to get the linear keyframes, and down at the bottom you can drag this down to get hold keyframes. So just like that, you're able to quickly change between tons of different animation types with this tiny little panel, which is a really quick way to speed up your workflow and also fun to use. Another fun feature of Motion 2 is the ability to control and change your objects and layers, anchor points, in a very easy to use interface. So we have this little toggle on the side of our motion panel. By clicking it, we will minify our speed sliders and also get the anchor adjustment screen that was in Motion version 1 but has been updated and improved for Motion version 2. So by creating an object, we will get an anchor point that is off in the middle of nowhere doing its own thing. By simply selecting one of the various adjustments, we can go ahead and pop our anchor point to the specified location on our object. So this works even when we have rotation keyframes, scale keyframes, any kind of keyframes or animation. You can go ahead and add this anchor point adjustment to your object while retaining your animation path. So I'll go ahead and use these minified sliders to add our adjustment of the velocity, and we'll see we have this animation. So no matter where you are, you can go ahead and readjust your anchor point by repositioning it just like this. So we will now have the same exact path of motion, but our rotation will be in a different position based on our anchor point. This will work across multiple different objects. Just like in version 1, it's just been sped up and improved upon. So if you would like to center the anchor points just like that, there you have it. Additionally, new to version 2 is the ability to support masks on objects. That was something I didn't have fully figured out for the first release of this, but if we add a mask to this layer, it can be any shape you would like, the new anchor adjustment screen will calculate the mask and not just the object. So you can reposition it to the top of your mask path or the center of your mask, which can be very helpful for your animation needs. Anyway, that is the anchor panel, and once again, you can use the minified version of our speed sliders to change the adjustment. You will not see the numbers, but by dragging it all the way to the left, it's setting it to 0, and we now have auto Bezier keyframes, linear keyframes, or for example, hold keyframes. And these two panels work separately, so you can still keep the numbers you had for the velocity on your main large speed slider panel. Now that we've covered the basics of the motion panel and just the easy to use control of keyframes and anchor points and whatnot, let's get into the fun stuff, which is going to be the motion panel that is located down here. Each of these buttons launches a unique task that will have a really cool effect on your animation. So one of those that we'll cover first is Excite, which showed up in version 1 but has been much improved for version 2 with a ton of cool new stuff that you should like. So with this animation that I've put together with simple scale, position, and rotation keyframes happening, we can just add some easing to the front, and we'll set this up to something like 61%, and as you can see, that's going to update in our graph editor as well. So now we have a little animation. So one of the things I will note is you're going to want, when you're using Excite or Jump, a feature I'll show you later, you're going to want the second keyframe of the animation to be linear, so the expression that we're going to add to this layer has something to control. So let's go ahead and add Excite to this rotation keyframe. I'm going to click this and we're going to get an expression that's added to our property as well as some controls up here in our effect controls. So now when I play this animation, you're going to notice that our rotation has now a little bit more character to it. It has some excitement to the property. So if I grab scale and position and click Excite, I will also add controls for those specific layers as well as the same kind of movement to that property. So we now have, in just a couple clicks, created a much more interesting animation. All of the properties that you see changing are controlled with these effect controls, stuff like the overshoot, the bounce, and the friction if we turn this up. So you can go ahead and have tons and tons of fun using this and just change the numbers as randomly as you would like and see what kind of animation you wind up getting. So as you can see, we now have a very odd animation. I didn't spend too much time with that those variables there, but let me show you one of the cool features that now shows up in version 2. New to version 2 is the ability to select as many properties as you'd like to add the excitement to. So by either selecting all the keyframes you'd like to add this to or the properties to the left, you can go ahead and click Excite, and very fast and quickly it will process through and add all the controls to both your property and give you the controls to control in your effect controls. So each of these layers has unique controls individual to their properties, and now you can cycle through as many layers and properties as you'd like and add this excitement expression. So this will work on your blend feature, your jump feature, and pretty much every feature you see in the motion control panel. So this can be a really easy way to do plenty of different kinds of animation. Also new in version 2 is the ability to smart catch, and what that means is when you have a object with multiple different kinds of opacity, you can add the excitement to all the various ones and it will call out the specific property in your effect controls, giving you even more ability to control every part of your animation and every single property. The second tool I would like to introduce is called Blend, as you can see right here. So by clicking your keyframes and selecting as many properties as you want, or by selecting multiple properties over multiple layers, by selecting Blend, you're going to be able to smooth out your animation. So by adding this, you're not only going to get the expressions on your various properties, you're going to get controls for each individual property. So let's go ahead and just do Command Z to see our animation before we add Blend, and then we'll go see what it's like with Blend. So our animation starts and stops. We created this using the speed sliders. And by selecting Blend, you're going to be able to smooth out this animation. So even though our keyframe starts here, our animation is actually going to start before. So as you can see, it's going to go off our path of motion, trying to smooth out everything about this, from the animation to the speed to the positional changes. And what you can do is end up getting the smoothest kind of animation with a really easy way to change it. So we can go ahead and crank up our smoothness and also our precision if we'd like. And also you can preview your animation without it by turning off these checkboxes, but I'll leave those checked for now so we can see what our animation looks like now that we've changed some of our properties. So our path of motion is here, and as you can see, our object is actually trying to smooth out our path of motion, almost going to a straight line. And it's going to actually continue, or it's going to begin a couple frames before our keyframe actually starts, and that is once again an attempt to smooth out both the velocity and the transformations of the properties, and you can use this across multiple layers, keyframes, and properties as mentioned before. Another new addition to Motion version 2 is the burst effect, which came from a script I put together a while ago called Effortless Accents. I've changed some of the code, I've made it work with everything, and added some new features. So by clicking this button, you are going to generate this wonderful little circle design, and it's going to give you a ton of controls. So all these controls can be keyframed, of course, and you can change everything from your position on the screen, so you can attach it to other objects. You can change your number of copies for this burst effect. And then you can change your copy revolution, so how many times you want to spin if you want to do something just from one side. I'll set this back to 360. You can change your revolution offset for a little bit of random changes. You can change your burst offset for random positional changes. You can change your distance from the center, which would be the main keyframe for little pops and bursts. You can link your width and height so you can get perfect circles. And you can also unclick that or keyframe it at any point. You can change your height. You can change your stroke width even. You can do tons and tons of stuff. I guess if you want to turn off your fill, you can. You can change your fill color, of course, to anything you'd like. You can turn off your stroke if you'd like. You can also change the stroke color. Additionally, you can change your burst roundness if you'd like to go something more square. And you can also add sequential changes to this burst effect, giving you tons and tons of robust controls for you to create some really awesome, cool animations. And this is one of the most fun tools to use in the motion toolbox or the motion panel. I'll turn off these effects, and just by cranking up the number of copies and maybe changing the stroke width down here to maybe like 2, you can get just some crazy geometric patterns that are so much fun to use. I'm going to go and turn the distance from center up and maybe also change my burst width, and you can just start to get some insanely cool designs that are so much fun to use. So let me go ahead and set the sequential change to 0, and there we go, we have an insane pattern. So this is a really easy way to create accents, bursts, fun effects, or insane designs, and you should have a lot of fun using it. You can create as many as you want, and it's all in one little layer. Another feature brought back from Motion version 1 is the clone tool. So what this does, as you can see, is we have a little animation playing, and if you've ever tried to copy and paste keyframes onto the layer that you want to add it to, again, by doing Command V, you're going to get duplicate layers. So what clone does is, in a very easy way, you just select the keyframes you'd like, and you hit clone, and in no time at all, it's been put onto the designated layers that they came from. So this is a good way to create loops and cycles, and really just gives you the workflow that you want for a lot of different kinds of animation. So in Motion version 2, this tool is just brought back, and the calculations are going to be way faster, so you'll spend less time waiting and more time animating. Another new feature brought to Motion version 2 is the jump motion. And what you do is you, once again, add the keyframe velocity you'd like to your first keyframe. And this will work if you want to set another keyframe after. Just always the second following keyframe, you're going to want to be linear so you can get this nice movement. So what I have is a nice rotating cube, and all I have to do is select the property I'd like and click jump, and what we're going to see is that now our animation has a little jump at the end, and all these controls up here, from the stretch to the gravity to the amount of jumps to the option to jump in or out, is all able to be controlled right at your fingertips. So by clicking, if I zoom out here, if I click the jump out, it's actually going to go past our final keyframe and bounce out the opposite direction. So just by viewing, you'll be able to see that we now, when I click this, can get a totally different kind of animation where we actually pass the point and then bounce back. So have fun with this one. You can change all these features and get tons of different kinds of looks, and you can also add this to as many properties and keyframes and layers as you'd like, all in one click. So that's also a new feature of Motion version 2. Also in version 2, the name motion or tool is now created inside the motion panel. So by clicking name, you're going to get a new panel that pops up in here, saving you space and keeping your workspace uncluttered. Additionally, I'll note that all alerts or errors will also pop up in the motion panel, telling you exactly what you need to do to get the property to work correctly. And this goes on for as many errors as you get, which are hopefully none, but if you don't have something selected, it'll let you know, keeping your workspace uncluttered and clean. Anyway, onto the name function. Simply by clicking clicking name, you're going to get this new panel, and this is for mass renaming or bulk renaming layers. And what you can do is just by adding your new name, if I call this one new name for this video, we can go ahead and click the separator to be before or after, and this will numerically sort through all the different layers and add this new name to it. So I'm going to add it after, and I'm going to change my separator to this wonderful symbol here and click rename, and as you can see, all of the layers are now renamed. I can also go ahead and select these layers one more time and give them another name. So how about I call it another name because I'm that creative, and I'm going to put my separator before and using a different symbol and click rename, and they're all updated just like that, and I can click back to go back to my motion panel and keep on animating pretty seamlessly. One of the most powerful new additions to the motion tool is the null option. So by clicking it, we're going to generate a null in the middle of our screen with a nice centered anchor point, which is great if you just want a null. So that is if you don't have a layer selected. Now what happens if you do have a layer selected? So I've got a layer selected and my anchor point is right over here. So I'm going to click null. The null is going to be generated onto the anchor point of the layer as well as parenting the layer to the null. So why would that be helpful? Well, this is really helpful when you have animations that you would like to control with tons of properties. So that would be great if that's all it did, but another new function of the null is if I duplicate this layer and maybe drag it up and maybe also change where my anchor point is now over onto this side, I can select both the layers and click the null option, and it's going to find the average between the two anchor points so I can continue using this pretty seamlessly. So what happens when you add your keyframes to this? Well, what's nice about the null tool is you are able to do so much with it. I can easily go and change my animation just like this and maybe add some easing to it so it's not quite as boring. Whatever it may be, I have this animation here. So it's pretty tedious when you have a complex path of motion, unlike this linear movement I have, to select the vertices and actually move the position on the screen. So what the null does is kind of act as a shortcut where you can move the null wherever you want since it's the parent, and the layers will retain their animation and move with it. So what this does is give you a really easy way to create a very, very complex animation, and you can also select another shape layer if you want and you duplicate it, create a new null, and then this one will act separately. And then you can go ahead and change all the properties of the null, and it acts as kind of like a pseudo control for your layers, easily giving you access to very complex animations. So even if we didn't have those layers created and we had, let's say, 8 layers, I could move these all over the screen. I have paths of animation. I can select all of them and click null, and it'll find the average of all the various anchor points as well as parenting it, keeping my animation all there. So this is a really wonderful way to create complex animation, and you can take it so much farther. I will be sure to post a video about some of the stuff I've figured out with that null control. And by deleting the null, your animation paths will actually stay there as well. So this is a great way to create complex animation in pretty effortlessly and also in a very fun way. Another tool that is brought back from Motion version 1 but just changed a little bit is the orbit function. So by selecting a layer and clicking orbit, we're going to get a wonderful orbit around our anchor point. And if we have another object, if I go ahead and delete this orbit, and I will duplicate this object here and maybe add a little keyframe animation as well, I can go ahead and add orbit to the layer and then just select the layer and that I would like to orbit around. Let's say I'd like to orbit around this one, so even in motion it's going to always orbit around this layer. So what this now does in version 2, Motion version 2, is you can select as many layers as you want and click orbit, and it will add it to all the various layers even though they're all in the same spot. But this is a really, once again, just a way to get complex animation together, and if you go ahead you can keep stacking these effects on top of each other. And I'll tell you what, this works absolutely fantastically with the null tool to create some really cool animations. Another new tool in Motion version 2 is called Rope. What Rope does is give you an easy way to connect layers with lines, and if I click Rope, you'll see that we get a new rope layer as well as some adjustments. But what's really cool about Rope is if you select 2 layers and you click Rope, it's going to tie the layers together, and when you create an animation, just like this, the layers are now attached by a line. So what you can do is no matter where you are, however many layers you have, you can easily select 2 layers and click rope, and maybe 2 other layers and select rope, and why not 2 more layers, and once again select rope. So this is an easy way to connect layers together with these wonderful lines, kind of the poor man's plexus in a way, and all these things can be changed, everything from the length to the time, so jumping between them, as well as the scale of the line or thickness of the line. So this is a really fun way to just add a little extra stuff to your animation and use that poor man plexus, and stacking this with all the other effects, you will wind up with something really cool and really unique. Another new tool that's really fun to use is the warp motion right down here in your panel. So when you have an animation that could look something like this, what would be nice to add is the squash and stretch, kind of like an auto way to make your animation look more lively and more interesting. So just by selecting your layer and clicking the warp motion, you're going to see that our layers auto stretched out. And so now when we play our animation, we're going to already get that wonderful squash and stretch with really no effort. And this will work across as many layers as you have selected and work in some really, really cool ways. So all of this stuff works really, really well together. So if I go ahead and maybe add some excitement or excite to this positional property, and then go ahead and play this animation, let's check out what the warp does when stacked with the excite function. So as you can see as this plays, we've already added a very dynamic animation with 2 clicks of a button essentially. You create the keyframes, you add excite, and you add the warp effect. So you can use this, if I go here, I'll actually mention it also right now, you use the trash option to delete expressions and controls if you've generated them onto the layer. So I wanted to remove that excitement from the position. Just by clicking trash, you can very easily. So let me add this expression back here, and why don't we add a couple more keyframes, maybe on rotation, to see what this can do. But I've had a lot of fun using this. It's a really great way to make your projects a little bit more interesting and gives you just enough controls to really maximize your use and get some cool stuff coming together. So as you can see, this is really just a square, but it looks like so much more. And you have controls down here to squeeze it even more and make the edges sharper or softer, and do tons and tons of stuff. But when stacked with like the null or excite or jump or really any of the different tools, you can wind up with really interesting animations that would be very hard to get without this warp effect. Another feature brought back from Motion version 1 in this update to Motion version 2 is the spin function. So by selecting your layer and clicking spin, what you're going to get is a wonderful rotation forever. And this will work if you have a keyframed animation or it's a parented object or anything like that. And you can control your spins per second by maybe turning it up. If you want to just have something go crazy, you can turn your spin calibration if you're trying to line it up with something. You can change your spin direction, and you can also turn your spin on and off. So that is pretty much spin in a nutshell. You can have some fun with this. It's a really great thing for background elements and also can be used in a very fun way for walk cycles actually, which I will be posting a video about in a little bit. Another feature that is brought back from Motion version 1 is the stare motion. So what this does, this works as does all the different motions across as many layers or properties as you have selected. By selecting your layer and clicking stare, what we're going to do is be able to tell the object to always look at another object. So let me go ahead and pick shape layer 2, which is this green little guy, and right now it doesn't seem to be looking properly. So by just calibrating or changing our stare direction, we're telling the object to always face that direction with another object. So you can do this across as many layers as you have selected, and you can start to get some really, really fun animations with a lot of little character to it just by using this stare feature. And create stuff that you would normally not be able to with that fun feature. This was existent in Motion version 1, so I'm going to keep this one a little bit short, but I will be showing some really cool stuff about it, like all these different features in future videos. I just really want to get the overview done and out with, so thanks for sticking with me this far. So believe it or not, I still have more stuff to show you guys, and I'm sorry about the length of the video. So basically we've covered the speed panel, the anchor panel, and the motion panel, and now what I'd like to show you, as you can see I have a picture of a guy sitting on my screen, the task launch dropdown, and this has some really cool things that we'll jump into right now. So a while ago I created something that I named the color rig, and I haven't really talked about it before, but basically you go to this dropdown and you add something called the color rig. So a couple things are going to happen, and it's going to actually process the picture for you, and this also works with video. So this is just all at default values, but I'll show you, and I can go way more into depth this down the road. But before the color rig and after it, and I grabbed a whole bunch of pictures online, just totally randomly. I just clicked in good pictures and downloaded some. But you can have a lot of fun playing around with this and create some really cool and unique looks. So this is before and after. You can also do a side-by-side comparison of with the color rig and without it, and then you can also do a comparison of the black and white between the color rig and without it. So typically the color rig is going to take those blacks and whites and make this beautiful picture that I've had a great time with. I take some pictures on my spare time, and I've had a lot of fun just kind of processing them in here instead of in Photoshop. And then you can go ahead and just do composition, save frame as, and export it to Photoshop if you do want to process it in there. So the default color log amount is 60, and you can also crank this up to an insane level. And also, if you feel like you lose details, you can go ahead and change your black point. You can make it lower, or you can make your white point way higher and get some really interesting looks. Obviously, I'm just changing some settings kind of randomly here, but you can really tweak it to get a unique look. So double clicking into the color log composition that is created, you'll see that you have plenty of other options to change, like image smoothing and HDR tones and contrast and all kinds of goodies. So this works on a lot of different pictures. We'll go ahead and even try a nice nature picture from National Geographic, and we'll go and do the color rig to it. And it's going to process for a second here and add a whole bunch of effects for you to see. And let's go see the before and after. So we have before, which looked great, and we have the after, which looks like it just bumps up contrast, but it does a lot more. So let's go ahead and take a look at the side by side. As you can see, the contrast is up, but the color tones all look right. And then the comparison of black and white, you'll notice that the side-by-side comparison is a good way to tell what changes. So now our black and white, it looks like the black levels are a little bit too dark, so we'll just go ahead and lower our black amount and bring some of those tones back, and then also maybe turn up our white amount, and you can get a really cool contrasted picture. Not saying this is always going to be a perfect, but generally speaking, it is a great way to add a little bit of more color to your scenes if you put it even up to 10 or 20%. So I got a picture of Katy Perry here from some album or something, I guess, and I will click color rig, and it'll process it out. And as you can see, we have a before and after. And the cool thing is the general color tones of the picture stays the same, but the colors are really brought out. And you can go ahead and crank this up to 10% and get some insane looks, or drop it down to even 15%. And you'll find that it really does kind of add just a little bit extra to a lot of different pictures. And the side by side is a really nice way to compare the two. And when you look at the black and white comparison of a standard black and white and then the color rigged black and white, you'll really notice the details when you get in on close-ups of things. You can see in her eyes and all her features that it really just starts to pop and look just a little bit better and less noisy. So you can do a lot more with that as I zoom in a crazy amount and have a lot of fun with it. I just wanted to show you guys that that is also something I wanted to throw out there in this motion to release. So along with that, if I do Command Z a couple times, I also have included a vignette rig also in this task launch dropdown. So you can go ahead and click vignette, and it's going to add a vignette to your scene. So it's going to be a really subtle effect, and I'm going to go ahead and turn my feather down to 0 so we can see, and I'll turn my intensity up. So as you can see, we have an ellipse, and clicking this effect, we can make it into a circle or whatever we want, and then go ahead and change our scale and easily move this vignette around the screen, and all of these properties can be animated. So if I go ahead and turn my feather up and then also turn my intensity down, we're going to notice by turning on and off the vignette that we've really brought the scene to life a little bit. And this works for motion graphic pieces or even for black and white pictures, or really anything you like. You can have a lot of fun with it. It's a vignette rig and it's pretty easy to use. So you can go nuts and really center in on something if you would like. And just get a nice stylized look. And once again, all these settings can be changed much further than these default values. It's just something that's fun to play around with at the very least, and hopefully a really fun tool for you to use. So now that we've covered a ton of stuff, I want to show you a couple more cool features. So one of the ones, as you can see over here, I promise I do not actually keep my projects like this. When I broke one I worked on a while ago, we're going to see all kinds of files, and this can turn into a mess. So what I did is I created something called sort, which will actually sort your project for you based on all kinds of stuff that you put into this. So this is just another thing for Motion V2 that just tries to make your production pipeline so much easier and takes you back to just being able to create and having fun with the project instead of organizing things and doing all kinds of tedious tasks. So I'll just show you the default thing. If you go up into your preferences, another little drop down here, we're going to see we have some input for null size, which I'll show you in a second, and also this drop down here for sort folders. So the sort feature that I'll show you in a second sorts all these various items into folders, and you can actually name them. So by selecting these various things, you can custom name this. So instead of leaving this at a default value for right now, I'm going to actually go and change my compositions here to super preview, just to prove that this works. And then also for my priority item, I'll explain that in just a second, but I'm going to go ahead and keep this option selected called old folders, which will delete old folders, and then I'm going to keep this unselected, which would remove unused items on sort, which is a great way to condense a project size. So anyway, let's go back into our Motion V2 main panel and go down to Task Launch and select the option called Sort. So if you look over at the panel here, we'll see that we now have sorted folders. So in our video folder, all of our video content is there, including image sequences. Our super preview, which was previously compositions, is now there, and our nulls and solids and audio and After Effects and Photoshop files are also all sorted. So let's go ahead and just do a Command Z and to mess up all these folders, and it will jump back to how it was. And if we go up into our preferences here, let me go ahead and click reset to the standard composition name, and all these preferences will save every time you open. So if you have a different naming structure you'd like to use, feel free to do that. And the priority item is a name you can give anything to pull it out of this sorting option. All you have to do is add this name, which is final for right now, to something. So this is great when you hand off a project and you want someone to know what the final composition you are working in or the final file of something is. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this final name to the front of this composition here, and I'll add it to another one as well. Let me find something. Here we go. And for this one, I'm actually going to type it in all caps. So we'll try that and see if it works. So if you go back into your Motion V2 main panel, go down to your Task Launch and just go and click the option Sort, we're going to see it's going to go ahead and sort all our projects pretty fast and actually pull out the two compositions that we just added final to. So now if I was to open up this project, I know exactly what is happening. Additionally, it will label all the various content appropriately with a nice color tag, so you're going to see that our final compositions are labeled blue and all the various features have its own color. So if I go up into my preferences and actually click unused items, it will clear out anything that's unused in your project if it's something that wasn't used, and keep your project size down. And if you go ahead and unclick old folders, it will make sure to save any old folders that you had in there and not delete them, and so you can make sure that you're not missing anything. But I promise you, it does a fantastic job. I've had no errors and I've used it extensively. So I'm going to go ahead and sort, and this time we're going to get the old folder option, and you're going to see all my old folders in there. So if I really wanted to, I could go and check that nothing got deleted. So I'm also going to delete the unused items, and if I go into Motion V2 down to Sort and click it again, it'll process again, and this project I just broke, so it was pretty complete, but it didn't delete anything for me. But once again, this is just a great way to sort your project pretty fast, and it'll process any size project you have and do it with 100% accuracy. So anyway, I hope you enjoy using that. If you're ever in a big sorting project and you just want to stop it, just click Escape and it will revert back to the normal one. And this is just another tool that I wanted to throw in Motion V2 to make your production life easier. So one of the final features I would like to show about Motion is something called Pin Plus. So as we all know, character rigging can sometimes get annoying, and this isn't an entire character rigging suite or something. It's just another little thing I threw in there because it can be helpful, and I thought, why not include it in the panel? So when you have these little puppet pins, you can animate them, and that gets pretty annoying when you have to toggle down into here and actually grab each individual puppet pin. So one of the things is when you are animating like that and you move your object, no matter if you're using a character rigging program or not, you're going to notice that you end up getting a split in your shape layer, as you can see right here. So in order to fix that, what I did is create something called the pin plus. So if we go ahead and just select pin plus, we're going to get nulls for all of our layers, a nice guide layer, and you'll notice we no longer get the split. So this was just another little tool I threw in there because I thought, why not? It's easy to use, and it's just another way to get a little animation done. And this is also a fun way to kind of stack with the excite feature or something and move all these pins around and just easily get some cool animations. And I will be putting up some pretty cool videos of some fun effects I found, like for example, when you stack this with the excite feature, you can get some very fun little animations, and then stacking that with the warp feature on top of this, you can get some even cooler animations. So this is just, once again, an easy way to move around and animate, but not necessarily a complete character rigging suite, but it is just another tool. So that is the pin plus, and finally we're getting to the last screen. In your preferences, you can go and change your null size here. If I set this up to something absurd, maybe like 500, and go back into my Motion V2 panel, I can either click the null to get a giant null, or next time I go to use my pin plus, it will generate nulls that are the size of the number I put in, and that feature will obviously save. So I'll go and do the null, and as you can see, we just get a giant null. And if I go and click the sort property, or not the sort property, the pin plus property, we're going to get giant nulls and also a giant control null. It's all based on a percentage of that number you put in there. And then, so that is the preferences screen. You can go ahead and reset all your options to default at any time. And then you also have the about page where you can visit. If you ever want to go to any of these links, you can go to mountmograph.com. You can see any new summits. I would love if you would provide some feedback so I can make this product better, because at the end of the day, it's really just creating a tool that can hopefully speed up your workflow and help you create some really cool content of your own. And then I'm also going to have an entire training series on the Motion 2 tool down the road. Right now, I'm a little squashed for time, and then also you can at any time click update to check for an update. And right now you can see my copy of Motion is up to date, which I guess I'm lucky. And then you can also see some legal stuff if you are interested in that. So anyway, this was Motion V2. I'm so excited about the update. Once again, if you are an existing Motion V1 user and have like your order number and your license, just go over to my website and I'll send you a copy of Motion V2 for free, because it's a lifetime updates. And if you don't have Motion, I guarantee it's going to be a helpful tool for you to integrate into your motion graphics workflow, and I stand beside it 100%. I'm going to do my very best to keep adding to this and making it better, and that's why the feedback that you guys can provide would be so incredibly helpful. So thanks again for sticking through this incredibly long and boring video, but I just really wanted to show you the basics of what this can do, and I will be putting up some pretty advanced videos about how far you can push this and how much it can help your workflow. So once again, this was Matt from Mount Mograph. Thanks a lot, and keep rocking on.